Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Mary Matte. Thanks so much for being here. Our website is usefulidiotspodcast.com. Go there to support the show and get bonus content. On this week's show, we have returning guest David Sirota. He is editor of The Lever, a great news site, and also author of a brand new book. It's called Master Plan.
It's an excellent book. His writing is always excellent. His books are excellent. He also co-created the story of Don't Look Up, the great Adam McKay movie. So he's truly a Renaissance man. And this is another great piece of work from David Sirota. So very excited about that.
All right, let's get to Democrats suck. Let's check in on how our Democratic leaders are holding the Trump administration to account. First, let's hear from Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman. He has thoughts on President Trump's bid for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Do you think the president deserves a Nobel Peace Prize?
Well, I mean, if this sticks, I think that the whole point of having a Nobel Peace Prize is for ending wars and promoting peace. And I'm going to make a direct appeal to the president. You know, I hope he chooses to provide the tomahawks to the Ukrainians too, and give them the tools that they need to push back against Russia. And if he brings the Ukrainian war to its end, I'll be the Democrat leading the committee for his Nobel Prize Peace.
So John Fetterman says that if Trump gives Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, which are long-range weapons that can strike far deeper into Russia than Ukraine currently can, then he will nominate Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Of course, this comes on the heels of Trump hoping that he'll win the Nobel after he announced a ceasefire in Gaza, which, as we're recording, is still very, very murky because the details are still to be finalized. And Israel is resisting freeing some really high-profile political prisoners, including Marwan Barghouti. But John Fetterman says, never mind all that. If Trump gives Ukraine Tomahawk missiles, he should get the Nobel.
Look, given that, as we've said before, Henry Kissinger has won the Nobel Peace Prize, it really wouldn't be that much of a departure to give one to Donald Trump.
All right. So meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, there's a big debate because, the Trump administration's just been bombing random boats in the Caribbean and claiming that it's fighting drug cartels. And Congress is like, hey, wait a second. Like, we didn't authorize these strikes, and we didn't authorize you to go launch a regime change operation in Venezuela, which it looks like the Trump administration is seeking to intensify. So here is Democratic Senator Elissa Slotkin. This is her speaking out against the Trump administration, but note that it's not that forceful.
That if the Trump administration wants to be at war against a terrorist organization, they should come to Congress, notify us, and seek our approval. Currently, the administration is waging a secret war against a secret list of unnamed groups that they will not tell us about. There's been 4 lethal strikes against boats in the Caribbean. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a CIA officer. I'm a former Pentagon official. I did 3 tours in Iraq armed alongside the military. I participated in targeting of terrorist groups. And I actually have no real problem going against cartels, given what they have done in inserting drugs in our community, the death of so many Americans.
So basically, she's saying, like, I'm good with what you're doing. It's great. Just all I want is to be consulted. I want to be able to give you a rubber stamp rather than you doing it without my consent.
Yeah, she just wants it to be more professionally done, I guess. And I also like the idea that it's the cartels who are injecting drugs into this country. Like there's no demand, like there's no domestic production or distribution. And speaking of the CIA, not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but they did have an interesting role in injecting drugs into certain communities in the 1980s.
Well, that's the experience she should be drawing on as a former CIA officer. Instead, she's drawing on it to not to call out her own agency for its role in fueling the drug trade, but in just saying to Trump, just come to me and I'll give you a rubber stamp. But I just want to be asked for a rubber stamp rather than you doing it without one.
Well, for Republican suck, speaking of the ceasefire, I wanted to take a look at the way that Donald Trump is presenting this. So here, let's take a look at the way he described this. I am very proud to announce that Israel and Hamas have both signed off on the first phase of our peace plan. Blessed are the peacemakers, President Donald Trump. And what's interesting is that if you take a look at his Truth Social post, he writes, this means all of the hostages will be released very soon and Israel will withdraw their troops to an agreed upon line as the first steps towards a strong, durable, and everlasting peace. All parties will be treated fairly. This is a great day for the Arab and Muslim world. Israel, all surrounding nations, and the United States of America. And we thank the mediators from Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey who worked with us to make this historic and unprecedented event happen. So notice any people or nation that's missing from this list for whom it is a great day. That would be Palestine or Palestinians, right? Because obviously he's towing the line for Israel and towing the American line, which is never creating a state for Palestinians, but it doesn't even pay lip service to Palestinians. I mean, he's not going to say Palestine, but he doesn't even acknowledge the Palestinians. But I guess that's not that shocking. And let's take a listen to what he had to say when he was announcing this.
It's amazing. I've never seen anything. It's so good for Israel. I spoke to Bibi Netanyahu just a little while ago. He called. He said, I can't believe it. He said, everybody's liking me now. Meaning him. He said, I said, more importantly, they're loving Israel again. And they really are. I said, Israel cannot fight the world, Bibi. They can't fight the world. And he understands that very well. So it's amazing the way it's all come together. And it's a beautiful picture. I don't know if it could ever happen again. It was just a set of circumstances.
That's the President of the United States talking to Sean Hannity, describing this peace deal as if Israel and the United States shared the same exact interests, as if what's good for Israel is good for the United States, what's good for the United States is good for Israel. And what's important is not to necessarily, stop the genocide of Palestinians. What's important is for Israel to look good, for Trump to look good, for Bibi to look good, and for everyone to love Israel. We've got a sponsor you're going to want to hear about. It's American made, it's built to last, and it's stylish too. It's American Giant. Back in the 1960s, 95% of clothing Americans bought were made in the USA. Today, it's only 3%. That's why we're excited to share our sponsor, American Giant. American Giant focuses on keeping things simple and close to home. They aren't affected by tariffs because their products never left the US. Today's trends of fast fashion have complicated clothing production by shipping cheap parts around the world to whomever can sew them at the lowest cost. And now you're paying the price with rising costs. But it isn't just about prices and helping the world. American Giant's clothes are comfortable too. From their famous hoodie to jackets, dresses, tees, and more, American Giant has a style and a feel that you're sure to be happy with for years to come. Support American-made, tariff-free clothing with American Giant. Get 20% off your first order when you use promo code USEFUL at american-giant.com. That's 20% off when you use code USEFUL at american-giant.com.
All right, for Isn't That Weird, let's check in on some media news. And my favorite media news of the week was Bari Weiss, a opinion columnist, pro-Israel activist, being given the keys to CBS News because they've just been bought by some very, very extremely wealthy pro-Israel billionaires, the Ellison family. So let's check in on how things are going at CBS News under Bari Weiss's new leadership. Again, she has no broadcast news experience, no even real reporting experience. She's an opinion columnist who funded an opinion site called The Free Press, which made fun of so-called woke culture and denied genocide, including denying famine in the Gaza Strip under Israeli bombardment. So let's check in on some of the fresh ideas that Bari Weiss is bringing to the CBS newsroom under her new leadership. And this comes from Michael Grinbaum, who's a New York Times media reporter. On day 4 at CBS, Bari Weiss is looking to make an early mark. She told staff today that she reached out to Hillary Clinton, Tony Blinken, and Mike Pompeo, and that the former secretaries of state had agreed to appear on a Middle East roundtable on the network. Wow. What bold, heterodox, outside-the-box content.
Wow.
Getting 3 former secretaries of state who all have the exact same policy when it comes to the Middle East, which is perpetual aggression and support for Israeli mass murder, to appear at a roundtable. So it's basically bringing the Aspen Security Forum to network television. I'm sure this will rake in all the eyeballs.
Yeah, that's really exciting. That's what she's getting the big bucks for. Where else could you find a group like that?
Now, here's something else we learned recently about Bari Weiss in terms of her background. I didn't know this, but she once tried out as a host on The View.
Yeah.
After Meghan McCain left the show, and Variety reports this. Weiss guest hosted a few episodes of the panel show, but according to insiders, her centrist, right, contrarian politics didn't test well with audiences, and she wasn't invited back to guest host. So the audience of The View didn't even like Bari Weiss. And they're saying here, they're trying to be nice to her by saying it's her politics. No, she's just really insufferable because she's an entitled pro-Israel activist who's like spent her career trying to cancel people who see Palestinians as equal human beings. And that's annoying. And now she's running CBS News. So I just think, so far her ideas include getting 3 war criminal secretaries of state together and having a panel discussion on the Middle East after not testing very well herself with audiences on a really kind of popular show. I just don't think, if the CBS News leadership cares about their ratings, I just don't think Bari Weiss is going to have the magic formula. That's my prediction here.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, a lot of the things that you just attributed to Bari Weiss are things that you could attribute to Meghan McCain, which makes it an even more troubling indictment of Bari Weiss. I mean, you have to be so uncharismatic to have basically the same politics as Meghan McCain, but be less appealing than Meghan McCain. I mean, I almost feel like she should win some kind of prize for that. Well, for Isn't That Terrible, let's meet an amazing woman, self-described Israeli actress, singer-songwriter, and model, Sarai Gavati Lobashitz. Here's what she had to say during an interview with Israeli news channel I-24. And this is in regards to October 7th. So let's play it, and I will, it's not dubbed, so I will say what she's saying over it. I'm not sad for every child in the world who cries. I'm sad, but I also understand that this child, if we don't act, will grow up to be a terrorist. So there you have it. Actress saying that the irony is that she's criticizing Israeli politicians for having bad Israeli PR, for doing bad PR for Israel. And then she goes ahead and says something like that, which is basically, yeah, it sucks that we're killing kids, but we have to kill them because if we don't, they're going to grow up to be terrorists. And in case that sounds familiar, and again, it's pretty ironic that this is someone who is talking about PR. In case that sounds familiar, it does ring a bell because SS leader Heinrich Himmler said during a conference once, I ask of you that which I say to you in this circle be really only heard and not ever discussed. We were faced with the question, what about the women and children? I decided to find a clear solution to this problem too. I did not consider myself justified to exterminate the men. In other words, to kill them or have them killed and allow the avengers of our sons and grandsons in the form of their children to grow up. So there you have it. Himmler, much like this Israeli actress, have the same theory when it comes to why children must be killed. And that's because they'll grow up to be avengers.
And this is why, there's this talking point out there that, a lot of Israelis don't understand what their government's doing in Gaza. They do understand. If you look at polls, most people support it. Most people support genocide. Most people support ethnic cleansing inside Israel. And so that actress there, I think, actually represents Israel rather than being some kind of fringe. It's just it's a society that's off the charts. And that's why what they say sounds a lot like what the Nazis said about Jews.
So it's uncomfortable for some people to realize it, but we have to face it.
Well, that's what we're here to do, you Splitty. It's uncomfortable, but necessary.
Uncomfortable truths, yeah.
Yeah. And those have been your 4 basic food groups. For this week's guest, we are joined by David Sirota. He is editor-in-chief of The Lever, levernews.com, co-author of the brand new book, Master Plan, The Hidden Plot to Legalize Corruption in America. This book explores how corporate power, think tanks, and their allies in government systematically dismantled U.S. campaign finance rules, something David Sirota has covered for a very long time. And we're going to talk to him about that and a whole lot more, including what's going on with the government shutdown, as well as we'll get into some media news, especially with Bari Weiss taking over CBS. Here is David Sirota. David Sirota, thank you for joining us once again on Useful Idiots.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
As we're recording this, we're entering the second week of the government shutdown. For people who are not following all the details, not familiar with what all this is about, help us make sense of what's happening here on Capitol Hill.
So a government shutdown is when the government doesn't essentially extend its budget into the new fiscal year. They passed something called a CR, which is a continuing resolution, which basically says we're just going to continue funding all the agencies at the same level they're funded in the past year. But when they can't pass one of those, then essentially there is a so-called shutdown. Now, I say so-called shutdown because in a lot of ways, the government hasn't actually shut down. The government is still operating in a certain sense. Essential workers are still expected to and are going to work in the federal government. They're supposed to get back pay. Donald Trump, of course, is right now threatening to actually not pay the federal workers who are working right now back pay when this situation is resolved, which is completely insane. Because again, these are workers, these are essential workers. These are like air traffic controllers that keep the economy going and the like. And what's really at issue here, the big sticking point, although there are a bunch of them, but the big one is the one that we at The Lever have been warning about, frankly, for months, and nobody was really paying attention to it. And it's kind of crazy, which is that various Affordable Care Act tax subsidies are about to expire at the end of the year if they are not re-upped, which could quite literally double the health insurance premiums for millions and millions of Americans, including disproportionately lots of people in red Republican states. These are the subsidies to buy insurance on the so-called Affordable Care Act exchanges. And I it's worth saying, look, I think the Affordable Care Act was a problem in the sense that it was designed to marginalize Medicare for all. It didn't include a public health insurance option. It was
Thank you, Obama.
Exactly. The Obama administration made a decision to use this bill to essentially fortify the insurance industry, which has left us where we are in a healthcare crisis, where the argument is over how much to subsidize private health insurance companies. But here in the short term, setting all of that aside, withholding those subsidies will crush millions and millions of people, small businesses. So the Republicans are simply refusing to allow those subsidies to be extended. And so the Democrats have decided that they're going to make a standoff over this.
So I'd love to get your response to two clips. First, this is House Speaker Mike Johnson. Listen to how he characterizes the dispute, which is much different than the way you described it. He says that this is about Democrats insisting on paying more money to subsidize the health care of undocumented immigrants.
Right now, undocumented immigrants are not eligible for federal health care programs. Democrats, as you heard, say they're not trying to change that. But one of their demands would restore Medicaid funding for hospitals to give emergency care, including to undocumented immigrants. Are you suggesting, Mr. Speaker, that ER doctors check people's immigration status before they render emergency care?
No. Again, it's another red herring. What the Democrats are demanding is that illegal aliens that care for them in an emergency room should be reimbursed at a higher rate.
To the hospitals.
To the hospitals than American citizens, young pregnant women. They want to pay more for illegal aliens than in U.S. citizens, and we are against that. The reason it's illegal right now for illegal aliens to receive taxpayer-funded benefits is because Republicans wrote it into the law July 4th. Don't take my word for it. Look at page 57, section 2141 of Chuck Schumer's counterproposal. It's on my website at speaker.gov. Everybody go look. Don't take my word for it. Read their section. They want to reverse those changes.
But first of all, a law was put in place during the Reagan administration, which guarantees that anyone who walks into a hospital gets critical
It still
care.
applies.
So are you saying, because basically the implications of what you're implying is that ER doctors should be checking people's immigration. If someone walks into a hospital and they're bleeding out, should an ER doctor not render care to that person?
No, it's another red herring. I'm not implying that at all. Everyone knows when the hospitals seek reimbursement from the federal government, what they did under the Biden administration is they set in place a program that pays the hospitals more for illegal aliens and U.S. citizens.
So that's the argument from Mike Johnson, David Sirota. If you could help us make sense of that.
Yeah, I mean, the way I read what he's saying is essentially that if undocumented immigrants in any way at all get any healthcare services at all, then that somehow, by extension, means that anything that the U.S. government does to make it easier to afford healthcare, if that in any way at all benefits undocumented immigrants, then that means the programs are unacceptable to the Republicans. What's really at issue here is the millions and millions of American citizens and small businesses. I really want to underscore that. Small businesses that rely on the Affordable Care Act exchanges. For those who don't know what those exchanges are the places in each state where if your employer does not offer you health care, you can go onto an exchange. And the idea was that you would be treated to a relatively set of benefits and rates in a sort of group, a simulated group scenario, so that you're not facing much higher rates because your employer doesn't offer group coverage. So the subsidies were designed to make those rates more affordable. If you withdraw those subsidies, they suddenly become way more expensive. So we're talking, that's why I underscore small business. Small business are not big group purchasers of healthcare. So if you reduce or eliminate or let expire those subsidies, those small businesses, those individuals, entrepreneurs, people working as sole proprietors, people who simply aren't offered healthcare through their employers, those premiums will go up for two reasons, by the way. It's worth adding this. One reason they'll go up is because you are not benefiting from the subsidy. The other reason those premiums will go up is because a certain number of people, in not getting the subsidy, will not be able to afford to buy health insurance. They will leave the pool, and the insurer's actuarial tables will adjust for a smaller pool, which will drive up the premiums even more, right? Insurance rates are in part derived from spreading the risk among a bigger and bigger pool. If you shrink the pool, by making it unaffordable, it has a kind of double whammy effect of making it even more unaffordable because the pool is smaller. This is what the Republicans are doing their standoff for. And what I do think is interesting and important here is that clearly the insurers don't like this, right? This is not, I'm a big critic of the insurance companies. I'm not saying they're heroes here, but they don't want this either, right? So the Republicans are essentially willing to antagonize the health insurance industry in order to try to demagogue and create a scenario that allows them to demagogue the immigration issue. I mean, that's where we are in our politics now, where the Republican Party is defying the insurance industry in order to kind of make a point or manufacture a point about immigration.
Well, funnily enough, someone who agrees that the subsidies are worth saving is Marjorie Taylor Greene, a MAGA member of Congress. Here she is responding to the argument from Mike Johnson that the subsidies are just a red herring.
Right, and it's an important one for the American people. With regard to the subsidies, remember, that is 100% a red herring. It's a distraction. This is what Chuck Schumer and the Democrats put together to try to make the issue of the day.
He said the issue of the subsidies, that you couldn't hear it. So he said the issue of the subsidies is a red herring. And it's something essentially that Chuck Schumer and Democrats are talking about right now.
Well, no, the issues of the subsidies are real. It's not something that anybody can say is made up. Also, people with regular or private plans, their premiums are looking to go up a median of 18%. That's brutal. I know a lot of small business owners, like a family of four, and they're paying $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month with deductibles of $7,000 to $10,000, and approximately 40% of these people don't even use their health insurance. So they're just burning money just in case they might have cancer, or just in case they have a terrible car accident. And then you've got single moms, many Americans that are really struggling that are on the ACA. If you double their health insurance or even triple it, these people are they're either going to have to drop it, or they're going to be choosing between rent and their health insurance.
So on the bigger question.
So there's Marjorie Taylor Greene. People will be forced to choose between their rent and their health insurance. She sounds like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, and look, the other person who's made that point is Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri. And I'm not holding up Marjorie Taylor Greene or Josh Hawley as heroes. They are simply recounting reality. They are clearly talking to people in their states and districts who are telling them, listen, I can't afford an 18%, 20-25% increase in health insurance premiums. So that is the reality, right? I mean, I think in playing that clip, it's like, look, you don't have to trust me. We have to trust you. This is Mike Johnson's own fellow Republicans in Congress who were saying this. And the thing is, I saw on social media over the last few days, oh, well, this just proves that the Affordable Care Act isn't affordable. And conservatives have always said this. Well, yeah, that's right. The Affordable Care Act is not affordable. It was a mistake to not do what every major industrialized country in the world has done and simply move away from or marginalize the idea of single-payer healthcare or even a public health insurance option. That was the original sin of the Affordable Care Act. But of course, Republicans don't really want to talk about that at all. I mean, they are fresh off of the Trump tax bill that throws people off of Medicaid. Right. So the Republicans, I mean, they truly have no answer on healthcare. And now they seem completely uninterested in even preserving, I guess, what you could even call the subsistence part of healthcare.
Is this going to potentially backfire, or are Democrats going to do what they always do so well? And you know this better than anyone else, which is, I mean, I used to think, which is like mess it up, but actually perhaps intentionally do the wrong thing because, as you've pointed out, in many ways, their interests are not so different from those of the Republicans.
There was a poll that came out from Donald Trump's own pollster a few months ago that we reported on at The Lever, which showed essentially that it was a poll of swing districts in the races for the House. The race to control the House can be very close, could be very close in 2026. And what it showed was when you ask people, should we get rid of these subsidies? Should we let them expire? What are the consequences of that for your Republican incumbent member of Congress in these swing districts? If the incumbent is somebody on the side of doing what's happening right now in cutting off these subsidies, that they go from potentially winning the race to down 15 points to a generic Democrat. Now, that poll obviously assumes that the Democratic candidates would be able to communicate effectively with voters and make the case that healthcare premiums are skyrocketing because of the specific actions of these Republican incumbents in the House. But I bring up that poll only to say that clearly the Republicans are in big trouble on this issue. When I look at a poll like that, maybe you can call me like an eternal optimist here in the sense of like, you know,
you're famous for that.
Right. Being an optimist in the sense that like people's individual material in their face, direct concerns hitting them in their wallet and in their family, that will actually matter. And what I'm getting at here is I would like to believe that ultimately voters will say, I could have had 20% cheaper health care. I don't have that because my Republican member of Congress is off screaming about immigration, and that's unacceptable to me. You would like to believe that the average voter, Republican, Democrat, Independent, regardless of how they feel on immigration, will be able to focus a vote on the material situation that they are facing. And you would also like to believe that Democrats can effectively make that case if this really does come to a head and those subsidies do expire. Now, there's a lot of ifs in there. Like, can the Democrats really communicate that effectively? I mean, I don't have a lot of confidence in that. Will the Democrats actually sort of have a spine and fight this fight all the way to the end? I don't have a lot of confidence in that. Will the media environment exist to focus the political conversation on people's the material effects of letting these subsidies expire? I don't have a lot of confidence in that, but to me, this is like a real test of whether kind of people's direct material economic circumstances will be the salient issue in our politics and in our elections.
And if it's not, it would be what, culture war issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think right. I mean, clearly Mike Johnson is basically saying, look, I think we can rip away Americans' health care and blame it on immigration, and that will be good for the Republican Party, that we can focus the debate on immigration. We can actually use people getting screwed on health care to fortify our anti-immigration, anti-immigrant demagoguery. And this all works for their political formula. But again, I would like to believe that first and foremost, voters are willing to vote on their own material economic circumstance and can see through that. Like, I don't really get the argument that sort of punishing immigrants, undocumented or whatever, that punishing them, that people are really in mass making the jump to that's going to solve my health insurance premium, right? Here's my view. My view is you can crack down on immigration all you want. Your healthcare premium is skyrocketing no matter what, unless this kind of situation can be averted. And I just feel like the Democrats have a strong case to make on that.
Well, especially if the Republican case is if a undocumented person is bleeding out, let's not give them emergency health care, right? I mean, that's essentially...
Yeah, Canadian, you, Aaron. Maybe you think it's a problem because you're
Yeah,
Canadian.
I guess so.
Yeah, I would also like to believe, right. Look, if you look at some of the polls on the immigration issue, I think there's this presumption among the political class and among a lot of politicians that Donald Trump is like winning the debate on immigration and the Republicans are winning the debate. I know there was a lot of sort of Democratic politicos, it's sort of conventional wisdom that the Democrats need to sort of mimic the Republicans' sort of punitive views on immigration and the like. But when you actually look at the polls just on the immigration issue alone, like it's a pretty mixed numbers that come out about where America really is on the immigration question. I think there's a lot of polls that show that the Americans do not like the kind of crackdown that Trump is spearheading with ICE and the like. So I just don't buy that immigration is this huge winner for Republicans, even in a vacuum, right? Like even immigration just as like border security, right? I don't necessarily buy, when you look at the data, that this is a slam dunk win for Republicans. And then you throw in the healthcare issue, right? Like the idea that people are willing to prioritize the average voter is willing to prioritize immigration demagoguery above the problems that they're going to face with like 25% higher healthcare. Like, I just don't buy that.
If you were advising Democrats right now, what would you tell them to be doing?
Well, look, I think a standoff in the government in the so-called shutdown, I think is the right move. I think not cutting a deal, not letting these subsidies expire, really fighting that to the end is, I think, really, really important. And the thing is, what I'm wondering is when and if, for instance, different parts of the Republican coalition will peel off. Let me give you an example. Like the small business lobby, okay? Is the small business lobby really going to sit there? The National Federation of Independent Business and the like, whether they like the ACA or not, are they really going to sit there and do nothing as their members face 25%, 30%, 40% higher premiums? Like, I think as difficult as this is going to be, I think testing whether the traditional pieces of the Republican coalition are going to sit with the Republican Party, the Chamber of Commerce and the like, whether they're going to sit with the Republican Party as that party hurts those powerful lobby groups' members in a very real way. And so I do think, at least for now, testing how loyal those groups are to the Republican Party over their membership, right? Small businesses and the like all over the country. I think that's worth testing right now.
In the history of U.S. class warfare, which you're very familiar with, I mean, how extreme is Trump? He's talking now about what a great gift this is to him, that he can fire people, as you mentioned, not give federal workers back pay, threatening their back, which of course might be illegal. Previously, he's issued orders that have stripped something like 500,000 federal workers of their union rights. So, like, where do you rank Trump as a class warrior in a long history of presidential class warriors?
It's a great question. I mean, I guess I would put it this way. I think Trump is far less, or in sort of unprecedentedly unsubtle about what his agenda is. I don't even think he's trying to hide it. And in a sense, I'm almost, in some ways, as much as I find his actual agenda odious and grotesque, I think we can be thankful that there is really very little pretense, right? I mean, there is really very little pretend here. Donald Trump is a chaos agent. Donald Trump, I'm not really sure he has any real ideology beyond power for himself. So if the class war that he's waging on behalf of his donors and on behalf of himself is all in service of building up his own power. And so it's hard to rank where he is because, you know as well as I do that there's been a lot of class warriors, oligarch class warriors in that job. I just think he's less subtle. And I think that when I say I think that's a good thing, what I really mean is it's not good the chaos he's sowing. It's not good the obviously the policies he's putting forward, but it's clarifying. We don't have to pretend anymore. We're seeing it all out in the open, and that's why I do think there's this idea that we're in a moment where the backlash to what Trump is doing policy-wise, I think, could be just as fast as what we see Trump doing now. To put a more fine point on it, Donald Trump creating a standoff over subsistence health insurance subsidies, arguably in the medium term, creates more space for there to more quickly be a public health insurance option or Medicare for all if a new class of leaders ends up regaining power. Like, I don't think it's typically been the political system ratchets to the right and then doesn't kind of ratchet back. And part of that is because we kind of normalize the people who ratchet it to the right. Like George Bush is now like this sort of beloved figure among like liberals, and he's just like a normal, oh, he's fine, right? Like he's not fine. Like George Bush is not fine. Like nobody should think that was an acceptable thing that this country went through. And he ratcheted things all the way to the right. But the fact that he's been sort of normalized makes it harder for things to sort of ratchet back to a real center. I think Donald Trump, in being so unsubtle, makes it more possible for there to be a shift in a real way back to a real, more populist center.
So you have this great new book out called Master Plan, The Hidden Plot to Legalize Corruption in America. And it's really relevant to so much of what's happening today when it comes to media conglomeration, but it's also very relevant to a really scary lawsuit that's being spearheaded by Vice President JD Vance that could have a really dangerous effect on some of the last remaining campaign finance laws in this country.
So Master Plan tells the story of the 50-year secret plot, and it really is secret, to legalize corruption in a systematic way, deregulate the campaign finance system, and make it nearly impossible to prosecute bribery. There was a plan for that. And I think people hear this and they're like, well, I know, I see corruption. Corruption's endemic. It's everywhere. It's pervasive. I think what we're talking about when we talk about a secret plot, we're actually talking about a plot that was written down and executed by a specific set of people with a specific set of plans and goals. This plot started in the early 1970s with what I think a lot of people know to be the Powell Memo, a memo written by Lewis Powell before he became a Supreme Court justice, where it was kind of a corporate call to arms, saying essentially that democracy had gotten out of control, that big business was being held too strongly accountable. He was very worried about corporations and oligarchs losing power, and he wrote this call to arms about how people with lots of money, corporations, oligarchs, and the like, had to invest in politics to make sure, essentially, that democracy and the people, if you will, didn't continue to get what they want, which is sort of more public programs, more of a social safety net, more regulations, preventing big business from running roughshod over the rest of society. All of that was bad to Lewis Powell. And Lewis Powell wrote this memo. And out of this memo, as we uncover for the first time ever, people know about the Powell memo, but what people don't know is how that memo was implemented. There's this whole theory out there that Lewis Powell sort of wrote his memo and then nobody really cared about it. As we uncover in the book, and you can see these documents, we uncovered them, we found them. There were secret meetings in which some of the most powerful people in the country laid out how they were executing the Powell memo. There was an effort to take over media, which we're now seeing culminating in the Paramount Skydance stuff with Donald Trump and Bari Weiss taking over CBS News. That was sort of hatched way back at this time. People think, this what's going on in media is very sudden, and it does feel kind of sudden, but it really is the culmination of a very specific plan that we uncovered. And the other point to say is that this plan also unfolded in the courts, not just by packing the courts, although obviously that has to do with it, but by engineering cases that elicit specific rulings. So Lewis Powell, for instance, let me give you an example. He writes this memo soon after, months after, he gets installed on the Supreme Court. And very soon after that, he helps engineer a Supreme Court ruling equating money with constitutionally protected speech, and then engineering, and really behind the scenes as we document in memos that have never been seen before, he engineers a ruling extending that idea, constitutional protection for money as speech. Money is speech. He extends that to corporations, saying corporations have a constitutional right to that power to spend in elections. And that case becomes the basis for Citizens United. And as you mentioned, JD Vance right now, as we speak, is spearheading a low-profile but huge case at the Supreme Court to try to give the now 6-3 conservative court an opportunity to go even beyond Citizens United. If you remember, Citizens United was the ruling that said that super PACs essentially can spend in an unlimited way because they have constitutionally protected rights to speech and they are independent of candidates. That was the key ruling. So now super PAC spending dominates elections. What JD Vance is essentially trying to do is give the Supreme Court a chance to now eliminate all of the remaining limits on campaign contributions directly to candidates. That JD Vance is trying to give the Supreme Court a chance to say, you know what? If a billionaire just wants to give $100 million directly to a candidate, they can do that. They're trying to give them a chance to eviscerate all that still remained after Citizens United. It's gotten very little attention. And by the way, one last detail on this. The Biden administration was defending current law. The minute Trump got in, Trump switched the Justice Department's position on this case. So the Justice Department stopped defending existing law, and the Supreme Court itself had to appoint a lawyer to defend existing law. The lawyer they appointed is a conservative lawyer who was the clerk for John Roberts when Roberts engineered the Citizens United case. And this lawyer has very recently argued in front of the Supreme Court a separate case urging the court to not allow an expansive enforcement of anti-corruption laws. So in other words, they have triangulated this entire case, right? They've packed the courts. They've engineered the case. They've got the Trump administration switching sides, and they've installed a conservative lawyer to be the one effectively defending it. If that sounds like a kangaroo court, maybe it is.
So what's the playbook for selling all this to the public as a victory for the working class, for freedom? Like JD Vance, he fashioned himself a reputation as being pro working class, but I don't see anything in his record that that support that. So what's is this just through is this just an effort just to push this through and hope nobody notices, or is there a massive also propaganda campaign to get people to buy into this agenda?
No, I think their theory is this. It's a great question. I think their theory is, we don't care what the argument, there is no public-facing argument.
Right.
In the effort to deregulate campaign finance, that they are making a just straight up First Amendment legalistic technical argument to the Supreme Court, hoping the Supreme Court gives them what they want, because once they get what they want, then it unleashes unlimited spending for them to make the political conversation about whatever it is they want. I guess what I'm getting at is, I don't think they're going out to the public saying, hey, we're deregulating campaign finance. We're making sure the anti-bribery laws can't be enforced. We're doing this for some higher purpose. I think this sort of two tracks. They're doing this expecting that the media and the public will not follow the ins and outs of campaign finance law and anti-bribery law, knowing that if they're successful, it will give them more power, under the law, more legal power to spend as much money as they want, making the political discourse and public policy whatever it is they want.
How does this all relate to what we're seeing right now with Bari Weiss? She's been appointed to run CBS, and you tease that you will be coming out with a larger piece on this news. Can you give us a hint into what you'll be saying?
And to hear the rest of the interview, please go to usefulidiotspodcast.com.
That was a great interview, and you are definitely going to want to, if you're not already subscribers to usefulidiotspodcast.com, you're definitely going to want to do that, because we get into a really interesting conversation with David about Bari Weiss and lots of other important things that you're going to want to treat yourself to. So please do subscribe. Also, make sure you check out the book, Master Plan, The Hidden Plot to Legalize Corruption in America. And you can find that book at levernews.com/book.
All right. You can find us at usefulidiotspodcast.com. Go there to support the show and get bonus content, including the extended interview with David Sirota. Thanks so much for tuning in to Useful Idiots. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much for listening to and watching Useful Idiots. For extended episodes, bonus content, and our weekly Thursday Throwdown episode, please subscribe at usefulidiotspodcast.com. Support the show for free by subscribing on YouTube, Rumble, and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like the podcast, don't forget to rate and review. You can also follow us on Twitter at UsefulIdiotPod. Thanks for supporting independent media. We'll see you next time.